Welcome back to another World History Lecture. This week we're going to be looking at the Crusades and using it as an example to see how religions end up in conflict with each other. And so the Crusades are, many events that happened between the years 1095 to 1291, but they're actually more Crusades than the ones we're going to look at, and they go actually beyond this time period, even into the 1400s, but we're going to kind of cap things around 1291 with the Fourth Crusade. So some key terms that we should know, and feel free to pause this anytime so that you can get all this information down, because I'm going to go through it kind of quickly. Are one, we need to know what a holy war is, and in Christianity it's going to be called a crusade. In Islam it's going to be called jihad, and what that is it's a war fought for a religious cause, usually against another religion, in the goal of showing that your religion, Christianity or Islam, is right, or is the true one, by beating up on the other religion and showing that you're more powerful. A crusader is a Christian who goes fighting on a crusade. They're the ones going to try to fight for God, and you could call it jihadist. I don't have that up there as one, but that would be the opposite version or maybe it's a jihadi. I'm not entirely sure on that one, but that would be the same thing the other way around. We're not going to see that term come up here, so that's why I didn't put that there. There are some ethnic groups we're going to need to know, and so that's the Arabs, and they're the ones that are the founders of Islam. They're from Arabia. They're the ones that usually the ethnic group that you usually might think of in the Middle East. Then you got the Turks, who also are a Muslim group. They came in from Central Asia. They're originally nomadic peoples, but they're going to be one of the major fighting forces on the Islamic side of things. And then we got the Franks, which refers to a kingdom that was kind of France and Germany at the time. We'll eventually give the names to the country today of France, but in this case it's referring to pretty much any Europeans. So it applies to all of them, but mainly we're talking about either people from France or people from Germany. And then we've got the Holy Land, or Holy Land, and Holy Land is a city that is deemed sacred by a religion. In the case that we're looking at here with the Crusades, it's going to be pretty much all about Jerusalem, because it is the kind of cradle of Christianity and Judaism, and then it's also a sacred city within the eyes of Muslims, just not as sacred as Medina and Mecca. It's their third top city, but it's still a very, very important city. And then a couple other things we need to know for the time period are serf. We're not going to see them come up in the Crusades too much, but that's going to help us understand what's going on in Europe at this time. And they're just a laborer that's kind of bound to the land. So they're kind of like a slave, but they've got some freedoms, but they don't have a lot of freedoms. So they're a step above a slave. They're just kind of a worker that isn't someone's property, but they kind of are property. Sorry if that kind of muddies things and doesn't make it super clear, but just realize they're doing the hard work on things. Also, there are pilgrims, and a pilgrim is someone that's going on a journey for a sacred reason, or going to a sacred place. Usually we're going to talk about this in the case of people are trying to make pilgrimages to Jerusalem, but a pilgrimage could be to any holy site. Then you got a sepulcher, and this refers to the tomb of Jesus that he was buried in, and we'll see that there's a Christian church built on that site called the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, so I just wanted to kind of give that for you guys there. And then there's pillage and sacking. We're going to hear about that, and that's when you go and rob and steal during wartime. Usually you're going to do that against cities that are along your way, or defenseless people. So those are all the key terms. Again, if you didn't get all those things down as I talk through them, make sure you pause the video here, get those down, and then you can move on to the next one. So what we need to start out with kind of understanding is just a little bit of the landscape here. And so we're going to look at the Christian world, or Christendom, and we're going to look at the Islamic world. And we're actually going to first look at the Islamic world, but you can see here at the start of the Crusades, based on this map, in the green, what all the Islamic territories have, and then in yellow and orange, you can see what all the Christian territories are. And you can see the Christians are mostly just in Europe. They've lost any territory they had before this to Muslim expansion, and we'll get to a slide that shows that a little bit more. But you can see the Muslims have a huge amount of the territory, and they originally have the Holy Land, but you can see here at the point of this map, there are the Crusader kingdoms there. And so all the lines you see there are going to be different routes that the Crusaders went to the Holy Land to try to take it back. And this is just showing the first four, because those are the main ones we're going to be looking at. So if we look at this map, hopefully it's going to show. I guess it's not going to show. The map was, I apologize for this then. The map is supposed to show the expansion of Islam. So if you can see my mouse on here, you're going to see it expand. You would see it expand from here in Arabia, make its way across North Africa, push all the way into Spain, and start pushing here by the end of things. But also by the end of this time period, you would see it starting to push back in Spain. So Christians are starting to take over that, and that's actually going to be one of the crusades that we're going to talk about that isn't the Fourth Crusade, or that's after the Fourth Crusade. But you would see Christianity starting to push back some there. But for the most part, it's pretty heavily controlled. The Mediterranean south and east of it is pretty well controlled by the Muslims. Again, sorry that didn't work, but here's the basic gist of the Muslim world. It stretches all the way from Spain all the way to China by this time. We're not going to focus on what's going on beyond the Middle East here in the Muslim world, but just realize they've expanded greatly. The main powers here are the Abbasids, which if we go, I'm going to go back for a second here, sorry. But if we go back to this, all this green territory you see here, except for over in Spain, is the territory of the Abbasids. It's just been divided up by some of their some smaller kingdoms that they're letting kind of run it, but they're not doing a great job of running it at the same time. So that's why you see them kind of as independent kingdoms. And so one of those independent kingdoms is the Fatimid Caliphate in Egypt. It is under the service of the Abbasids, but not fully there. But they're one of the powerful ones. You got the Turks, who are part of the Abbasids, and also they're the ones pushing into what we call Anatolia, or modern-day Turkey. I'm going to go back a second again here. The Sultanate of Rum you see here, that's what we're talking about with the Turks and where they're at. So you've got all that going on, and then over in Spain, you've got a thing known as the Cordoba Caliphate, where you have a mixing of Christian, Jewish, and Islamic culture. And the Islamic world here at this time is highly, highly advanced. It's actually much different than what we see in the Middle Ages with the Europeans in that they're not as advanced. The Muslims are way far ahead of them in many ideas because they continued the teachings of what we see coming out of Rome and Greece during the time period before this, before the fall of Rome. They pick that up once they find the scrolls and information on it. They also control Jerusalem, and they've controlled that pretty much since they've expanded out of Arabia in 637. And they also control a lot of the Silk Road and Indian Ocean trade that goes into Europe, and we'll talk about those a little bit more as we get going. But the Muslim world is pretty dominant at this point, and they would be kind of the superpower of the region. The only ones really checking them are the Byzantines, who we're going to see there, or you might see them on this map that I just switched to, labeled as the Roman Empire. And I'll get into that a little bit more here. But here in this map, you can see what the whole Christendom looks like, or the Christian European world here. You've got the Franks here in this kingdom that's in pink. You got the Holy Roman Empire, and you got all these other kingdoms like England and the Kingdom of Sweden, and they're very divided. And that makes them weaker than the Islamic world, where they're more united in a common cause and behind a common ruler. So it's much smaller, though, again, and they're divided, so that makes them weaker. And I don't really have a good comparison to go with at this, but the superpower here at this time is the rising Islamic empires, and really under the Turks, they're the ones that are dominating things. And the Christians are not very strong in the Roman Empire here, what you're going to hear me mostly refer to as the Byzantine. It means the same thing. They are going to be weakening at this time. They used to be really strong, and now they're weakening, and they are no longer a major power. And so in the Christian world, we have a couple of empires. In the east, that pink one that I talked about, the Roman Empire, is the Byzantine Empire. They continue the ideas of the Roman Empire, which we looked at earlier in the semester. And then in the west, you got many different kingdoms that are constantly fighting with each other. But the one thing that does unite them together that I should have brought up on the previous slide that we've got here is the Pope, or the head of the Roman Catholic Church, is telling them is telling kings and whatnot what they can do. He's more powerful than they are. But one thing that happened between the Pope and the leaders of the Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, is they got into a fight, and this led to what we call the East-West Schism, and that divided the two churches. And so that's where we truly get a church known as the Roman Catholic Church, and we get the church known as the Eastern Orthodox Church. And so they're both going to be Christian groups, but they're not great friends, but we're going to see that they'll come together here for this common cause to fight against the Muslims, but then we'll see that doesn't hold true for the whole time. And then one last thing to bring up here on the left is an explanation of the social structures, because we kind of need to know this to understand who's going and fighting. But at the top of things, you're going to have the king when it comes to the things that are not religious. At the top of the religion side, you would see the Pope there. And then under the king are going to be nobles, and under the nobles are going to be knights, and then under the knights are going to be those peasants or serfs that we've talked about. The serfs and peasants are tied to the land. They do the general work. Then knights control them, or the land that they're on, and they're going to protect those peasants in exchange for foods and services. Those foods and services are also going to make their way up to the nobles and also all the way up to the king. And in return for all that, the king is going to give these people land to control these peasants on, and they're going to give him service. So the knights are going to give the king service, the nobles are going to give the king service, and that service is military service and going and fighting for him. But that's the basic structure. And so we're going to see that the most of the fighting is going to be by knights, but a lot of peasants are also going to go to it too, because there's an advantage to going to do it. And then nobles and the kings are going to be the ones calling and leading these crusades. So we kind of just need to know that basic structure to know who's running things. You are not going to have a peasant going and leading one of these crusades. It's always going to be a king or a high-level noble that the king is sponsoring, and they're going to get all the knights and peasants to fall in line with them. Okay. Now, moving on to a little bit more background here, the Crusades are going to really revolve around the Holy Land here of Jerusalem, and we need to know, well, why is it important? And so it's really important because it's the holy city for all the Abrahamic religions. For Judaism, this is where their old temple was at. It's been destroyed. It got destroyed by the Romans, but it's their most sacred city. It's their city where the Ark resided, and that's where their temple was. For the Christians, it's where Jesus was crucified and where he ascended to heaven. So it's a big deal for that. And then for the Muslims, it's also the place where Muhammad ascended to heaven. And also it's where Abraham sacrificed, or almost sacrificed his son, but didn't. And so that is commemorated with this mosque that you see right here in this image. That's the Golden Dome Mosque, or Al-Aqsa Mosque. And with that, that's built on where the old Jewish temple used to be. So it's kind of a contentious site, but this is why it's important to all of them and why they're going to fight for it. Now, just as a little bit on the crusade versus jihad, we've kind of already gone over this with the key terms, but for a crusade, it's a holy war, and it's against any non-believers in Christianity, whereas jihad is the holy war or struggle against any non-believers. But it can also be an internal struggle within yourself. But in this case, we're talking about that external struggle. And for the goal of both these, they're going to be pretty similar. And for the Christians in the crusade, they're hoping to be forgiven for their sin, but that's going to be if they die in battle. The other reason might be to convert people or bring back land or power to the Christian church. Whereas for the jihad, it earns you a place in paradise, again, if you die in battle. But you can also get riches and other things like that from it, and hopefully convert people to your faith. So, why would you want to go on a crusade? If you looked at those maps, and we'll get some maps up here again, but you are going to travel a long way, and there is no plane to take you from France, modern-day France, to the Holy Land. You're going to take a long sea trip, or you're going to walk a long ways. And so why would you want to do this? And there are many reasons why you'd want to, as you can see here, but they break down into kind of 4 categories. You have a religious category, you have a political category, economic category, and a social category. So for the religious, people want to be able to go and travel to the holy city without being abused. And they were being messed around with by some of the Muslim kingdoms or armies that were moving into that area at that time. And so when the Christians were pestered by them and were told to go back, that really upset a lot of Christians. And so they wanted to go and take it back and open it up because it's a religious act for them. They also wanted to get that forgiveness for sins, and they, on both sides, wanted to get rid of non-believers. Okay, on the political side of it, one reason we're going to see here is to help protect the Byzantine Empire. That's actually why they're originally going to be called. But also, This acts as a way to get the Europeans to go and fight abroad instead of fighting themselves, which is what they were doing. And so they might bring in new territory as well. And so it could be that you set up a new kingdom in there. So instead of fighting for the little bit of land that's in Europe, you might get a new land and bring that into the realm, and you get to run it, and you bring it in for Christianity, which also goes to that religious side of things. For the economic reasons, with war, if you survive it and if you do well, you can get a lot of money from it. If you conquer a city and take everything that's not nailed down, you can get very rich from this. But another reason, if you're not going to conquer it, or if you're not going to get a lot of the spoils, but you want to take advantage of it when it's conquered, is as a merchant, you can get better trade going through a city that is loyal to your religion, or that follows the same religion versus one that doesn't. Because what would happen is Christians would usually give other Christians better deals on products, while Muslims would give other Muslims better deals on products. And so if you have Christians that control these cities, now the merchants can get better price and sell it for, or make a bigger profit when they sell it back to Europeans over in Western Europe. And then the last reason, for social reasons, are one, serfs could be freed from their being or serfs, if they went and served, could be freed from their terms of service on their land. Also, if you were a prisoner or were an outcast in society, you might be sent on it as punishment, or to have that punishment shortened. And then there's always the idea of you're going on an adventure. You get to go travel and see new lands, and there wasn't Fortnite to play, or whatever video game you want to say. I mean, you don't have the new Call of Duty coming out, or Death Stranding, where you get to go experience this new world. There wasn't that kind of stuff to do. There wasn't entertainment. And so for some people, going on this adventure was a great, or going on this journey, this crusade was a great adventure, and you get to see new things and learn new things and all that stuff. So there's a lot of reasons to go on a crusade, but those are kind of the main ones. And so here's a map showing you the trade routes here. This is what was known as the Silk Road and the Indian Ocean trade. So the Indian Ocean trade is the sea routes here, but you can see they'll go into the Middle East, and then that stuff will go into Europe. And also these routes here will go across Central Asia, make their way into the Middle East here, and then make their way into Europe. And so if you can control these, you can control the trade, and that makes you very wealthy. And the things that are coming through here are very valuable things, like silk. Every person that's wealthy wants silk if they can get it. Porcelain or really fine china is there. And so you get people wanting to get these luxury goods here into the Middle East, and then getting them into Europe and being the ones that transport it for the cheapest cost, because then you can make more money. So that's the kind of the trade one. I wanted to show you guys that one so you kind of understood it, because we haven't talked a lot about the Silk Road yet in the Indian Ocean trade. We will get to those really kind of next semester when we talk about global trade routes. Now, this all started, the first crusade happens in 1095, all because of a speech by the Pope. And he's at the Council of Clermont, and Pope Urban II was called for by the Byzantine Empire to say, the Byzantine Empire came or sent him a letter saying, hey, we could use your help in fighting these Turks. They're kind of beating us up in Anatolia, or modern-day Turkey, and we need your help there to push them back. And so Pope Urban, seeing an opportunity for Christians to go and take back land, not fight each other, unite all of them to kind of together, we see that he calls for this crusades, and he says, there's a much longer speech than this, but enter upon the road to the Holy Sepulchre, that's referring to get to Jerusalem where Jesus died and was buried, and wrest that land, or take that land away from the wicked race, and subject it to yourselves. So we want to take it away from the wicked race, being that's the Muslims, and we're going to make it ours. We're going to make it our subject. And so this would launch the first crusade, and then there's going to be many crusades after it. We're going to go into each of those, but this is the call to the start of it. So we can see there's a religious reason in that we want to take back this Holy Land, but there's also going to be other reasons why people go on this than just what the Pope's calling for. And so here's a nice little map here showing us the four major ones. So in blue, you're going to see the first crusade. Green is second. Third is the red. And then the fourth is that orange, yellowish one. And you'll see all of them go to the Holy Land here except for one, and that's the fourth crusade. They never make it there. They make a stop in Constantinople, and that kind of they get stuck there. They decide to sack Constantinople, a Christian city, instead of that, but we'll get to that. And so you can see people kind of came from all over Europe, mainly from France and the Holy Roman Empire, to go and fight, which is why they're called Franks a lot of the time. But this gives you hopefully a good idea of where they're going from and to, and that'll allow us to get into our ones. And then one last thing I want to point out here up at the top, we got this nice little crusader there yelling Deus Vult. I don't know if there's really any historical evidence saying they would yell out and scream out Deus Vult while they were going there, but what that is that's Latin, and that's saying God wills it. And so it's associated with them, but I can't tell you exactly if that's what they were calling out all the time. Also one thing I should point out here, in that yellow, those Muslim lands, those Seljuk Turks you see there, that's what the Byzantine Empire was calling for help from. They're invading Anatolia, or this region right here, and they wanted help there. And instead of the Crusaders going and fighting in there, they moved down to the Holy Land and take that back. So the sad thing kind of about this, and I'm going to jump ahead, is this doesn't really help the Byzantines, especially that Fourth Crusade that ends up in going in and attacking their capital. But instead of focusing on fighting the Seljuks, they fight more for the Holy Land and try to take their land for their own, because this doesn't get put back into the Byzantine Empire. Instead, it's made their own kingdoms, which we'll get to. So, First Crusade happens in 1095, goes to 1102. The goal was to take back Jerusalem, and they were successful. This is the only truly successful crusade that we can say. The Crusaders were not very graceful with how they did this. It took them a while to get there, and they hopped around from city to city to city, eventually taking Jerusalem and pillaging the land as they went about to supply their army and get riches from it. And the really sad thing with this is, as they're going to the Holy Land, and this will be true of any of the Crusades that we talk about, as they're going through Europe and as they're going through the Byzantine Empire, many Crusaders do not hesitate to go and beat up populations that are not Catholic Christians. So at times they will go and beat up Orthodox Christians in the Byzantine Empire to get resources, like they're starving, and so they go beat up people for food. They will go and attack Jewish communities in the ghettos around cities because they're not Christians, and they'll just say, well, it's quicker to just go here and kill the Jews here than go all the way to the Middle East and go to the Holy Land and take things. So we'll just pillage here and then go back home, and we fought for the church and got wealthy from it and didn't have to go as far. So great. So that's kind of some stuff that's going on. The outcome, again, is a success. They take Jerusalem, but they killed maybe about 3,000 non-Christians and in Jerusalem. And we're going to get into some reports on that in what we look at on Block Day. And then some other cities they take are Antioch and Nicaea. These are all cities along the coast of the Mediterranean there. We're going to skip the Second Crusade because nothing really happens there. It's not successful. And so we'll jump to the Third Crusade, where there's kind of some success there. The Jerusalem was taken back by the Muslims by a guy named Saladin. And so three kings went to try to take back the Holy Land. You have Richard I of England, also known as Richard the Lionhearted. You have Philip II of France, and you have Barbarossa of Germany. Unfortunately, Philip II of France and Barbarossa of Germany do not go all the way to the Holy Land. Barbarossa drowns on his way there, and his army goes back home. And then Philip of France, after Barbarossa drowned, said, well, I've had enough fighting for now, and he goes back. So it's all Richard the Lionhearted against Saladin. They fight to essentially a stalemate, with Saladin having the advantage. And so the Crusaders go home, but they get a free passage home, and they get the right to send Christians back to Jerusalem to make their pilgrimage that they want to. They can't be stopped on making their pilgrimages. So this is a win for the Christians in that way, but they don't win back the Holy Land or anything like that. And this is the last of any of the Crusades that are kind of a success, at least going to the Holy Land. The Fourth Crusade, as I already mentioned, doesn't get there. It instead and it wasn't supposed to go there to the Holy Land anyways. It was actually supposed to go to Egypt. But instead of getting there, it goes and sacks Constantinople instead, because Venice wanted help in beating up one of its rivals that wasn't the Byzantine Empire. But then there was a guy that wanted to become emperor of the Byzantine Empire, and so he recruited those crusaders then to go and help him become emperor of the Byzantine Empire. And he got thrown out, and so then the Crusaders went in and took over and put themselves in charge. And the big thing with this is going to be the thing that really knocks out the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantine Empire will last another about 150, 200 years after this event, but it will be the one that ends, the one that puts it on the tipping point and puts it going over the top to collapsing, where it might have been able to recover before. Also, this leads to really no more trust between the East and the West. Orthodox Christians no longer trust Western Catholic Christians, and so this leads to a permanent split there that had already been started by the Great Schism. And it also kind of said about the fact or the idea that you could do a crusade against anyone that's not Christian or not Catholic. And so we're going to see some of the crusades shift in different times to go and attack people that in Germany that are not Christians, or in Eastern Europe that are not Catholic Christians, and to convert them. Some other crusades to know. We were brought up the Second Crusade failed. There's a Children's Crusade, which might have happened, might not have happened, where you had some kids go on a crusade, and instead of making it to the Holy Land, they get sold into slavery. You've got the Fifth Crusade that attacked Egypt and failed. The Sixth Crusade kind of did some stuff in the Holy Land, but really didn't do anything major. You don't really need to know that 10-year lease thing. And the Seventh and Eighth Crusade also failed, and there are more crusades after this that are, again, not successful. The only other successful crusade that we'll bring up here, or two actually, are the Reconquistas, and these are ones outside of the Holy Land. In Italy, they reconquer Sicily, and so that is if you think of Italy as a boot here, that is the rock that the boot might be kicking or is about to get dropped on its toes. And then the other reconquest is in Spain, which goes from the 1060s, so even actually a little bit before the Crusades, and will end in 1492 when it's fully reconquered by Spain and Portugal. And this is a slow process. As you can see, it takes about 400 years there, or a little over 400 years, but it finally ends in 1492 when Granada is retaken by the Christians and Muslims and Jews are forced to leave or convert. And also in this year, you might know other major thing that happened, like sailing across the ocean. And that was enabled because the Spanish kings had fully taken back all of Spain. Now, last big things here to take a look at are what are the effects of this? And there are many effects. One, Christians start to make more pilgrimages to the Holy Land, and there's some tolerance there with that. But overall in Europe, there is less tolerance. And there's actually less tolerance in the Middle East for some things. We would see in in Egypt, that Christians get kicked out or are forced to convert where they had been welcome to be there before. The Pope also is going to lose power. People are going to look at this and this is an abuse of the church's power. They shouldn't be calling for people to go to war, and it kind of goes against the Bible and all that stuff. And it gave kings more power because they were the ones going and doing this stuff and supporting it. And so they gain some power while the church loses some because people are like, this wasn't the best thing ever. The East and West Christians, again, we already hit on this, but are split. They don't come back together. They're looked at as kind of rivals, although they're still part of the same religion. The Byzantine Empire, again, a couple hundred years after the sacking of Constantinople, will collapse to the invading Turks. Islamic, one of the good things, though, like most of these things we've said are kind of bad things there. One of the good things here, though, is that the Islamic world was very much further ahead than the European Western world in ideas of science and technology, and so some of those things are going to come back with them. This also leads to eventually an increase in trade between the Islamic and Muslim worlds, not necessarily during that time, but it picks up after that time. And because of this division, though, or this divisiveness between the two religions, some Europeans are going to want to find a different way to trade so they don't have to go through the Muslims. And that will lead us to our age of exploration, where you get Columbus going and sailing the ocean blue, and you get people sailing around the southern tip of Africa to get to the Indian Ocean to trade and get involved with that trade route of the Silk Road and the Indian Ocean trade. And so that's the Crusades in a nutshell. A lot of information. Hopefully you're able to kind of pick up on it all. And we're going to get into some of the specific things that were said in the Crusades and what people did as we go into the rest of the week here.